Welcome to Life Stories, where we share powerful journeys of resilience, growth, and overcoming adversity. Today, we bring you the story of Lena Carter, a single mother who has fought tirelessly to build a successful career while raising her daughter. But when betrayal comes from the most unexpected places, her own family, Lena's strength and determination are put to the ultimate test. Join us as we follow Lena's inspiring path to reclaim her future and find her true worth. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to begin today's story with us. The sun had barely risen, but I was already awake. The golden rays of morning sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the towering skyscrapers of downtown Philadelphia. I gazed at them with a sense of quiet awe as I took a sip of my coffee. Today was a special day. After years of sleepless nights, juggling work, motherhood, and studies, I had finally secured a position as a senior financial analyst at Arlington Financial. I could hardly believe it. It felt like I had been working toward this moment for a lifetime. "Mom, today's your final interview, right?" my daughter, Emma, asked with a sleepy voice, breaking me from my thoughts. I turned around to find her standing behind me, still in her pajamas. She was 10 years old but had already learned to carry herself with a quiet wisdom that always surprised me. "Today's just a formality, sweetheart," I said with a smile, gently stroking her dark hair. "I've already received the offer. It's just the final paperwork and a tour of the office." Emma beamed up at me, her face lighting up with pride. "Congratulations, Mom. I know you'll do an amazing job." Her words filled my heart with warmth, and for a moment, I allowed myself to bask in the love of my daughter. For the past 10 years, I had been both mother and father to her, struggling to provide for her while building my career from the ground up. It wasn't easy, especially after Emma's father left us when she was just a baby. But every setback, every sleepless night spent studying, every job I had to take just to make ends meet, was worth it. I had finally reached a place where I could look at myself with pride. As I prepared breakfast, my thoughts turned to my own mother, Barbara. She had worked as an executive assistant for over 30 years at a large company, building a network of influential people in the business world. Despite her retirement, she continued to hold onto these connections, treating her career as a badge of honor. But our relationship had never been what I hoped for. When I was younger, Barbara had always been distant, and her affection had been reserved for my younger sister, Courtney. I remember feeling that shift when Courtney was born. It was as if I had suddenly disappeared from my mother's heart, replaced by this new, perfect little girl. Courtney was always the one who could do no wrong in Barbara's eyes. Even though Courtney never held a proper job after graduation and still lived with Barbara, their bond seemed unbreakable. I, on the other hand, had worked my entire adult life to build something for myself. But it was never enough for Barbara. "Mom, we're going to Grandma's house this evening, right?" Emma asked, her voice snapping me out of my thoughts. I sighed. "Yes, we are, sweetheart. I need to tell her about the job offer," I replied. In truth, I wasn't sure how to feel about sharing the news with Barbara. I had no doubt that she would outwardly congratulate me. She always did when it was convenient, but her real feelings were harder to discern. In the past, she had said things like, "A single mother can't possibly work at a large company." It stung every time. Emma, however, didn't care. She was still young enough to believe that people could always find a way to love and accept each other, no matter what. It was one of the things I loved most about her. She didn't see the complexities, the years of hurt, the silent judgments passed by family. All she saw was that I was her mother. And in her eyes, I was enough. But I wasn't sure if I could ever truly be enough for Barbara. Not after all these years. Even as I was about to embark on this new chapter in my life, there was a gnawing fear in the pit of my stomach. What if my mother didn't support me? What if she didn't understand how much this meant to me? Despite my mixed emotions, I knew what I had to do. I would face her, tell her about the job, and let the chips fall where they may. I had worked too hard to let anything hold me back now. The journey ahead, both personally and professionally, was mine to take. And I wasn't going to let anyone, least of all my own mother, stand in the way of that. As I finished getting Emma ready for school and gathered my things, I felt a quiet resolve settle over me. Today wasn't just about securing a new job. It was about proving to myself that I could overcome the past and create the future I wanted. For me and for Emma. We were going to be just fine. No matter what happened next. After dropping Emma off at school, I headed straight to Arlington Financial. Trying to focus on the task at hand, I stood in front of the gleaming glass building, took a deep breath, and reminded myself that I had earned this moment. I had fought for it, worked tirelessly, and now it was time to let my abilities speak for themselves. I was finally going to walk through those doors as an equal to anyone else in that company, regardless of my past or my circumstances. The day passed in a blur of meetings and paperwork, and by the time I picked Emma up from school, I was feeling a strange mixture of pride and exhaustion. Emma was excited about my new job, her enthusiasm a welcome distraction from the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. She kept asking me questions like, "Can I see a picture of your new desk?" Or, "Will you be home in time to help me with my homework?" I smiled and reassured her. But deep down, I knew what awaited me when we got home. My mother, Barbara, and my sister, Courtney, had always been a complicated part of my life. We had never shared the kind of warmth or closeness that I had always longed for. And now, as I was about to take the next step in my career, I couldn't shake the fear that my family might try to hold me back again. That evening, as we drove to Barbara's house, I tried to keep my nerves in check. Emma, sensing my unease, said quietly, "Don't worry, Mom. Grandma will be happy for you." I gave her a small smile, appreciating her optimism, but I couldn't bring myself to share her confidence. When we arrived, I rang the doorbell, and Barbara answered. As usual, her smile was polite but distant, and she stepped aside to let us in. I could feel the weight of her gaze on me, as if she were trying to read me, trying to figure out how much I had changed since I last saw her. I had spent so many years trying to prove myself to her, only to be met with indifference or passive criticism. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to sound casual. "I have some news. I got the job at Arlington Financial. I start next week." Barbara's face remained neutral, and for a moment, I wondered if she had even heard me. But then she nodded and said, "That's nice, dear. I'm sure it will be a good experience for you." Her words, though polite, felt hollow, as though she were simply going through the motions. It stung more than I wanted to admit. I had hoped for a little more warmth, some genuine excitement, but I quickly realized that I wasn't going to get that from her. Courtney, who had been sitting on the couch, looked up at me with that smug, condescending expression she always wore. "I guess you got lucky." "Huh?" she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "I mean, a single mom with no real connections getting a job at such a big company? Must have been a fluke." I tried to ignore her, but the sting of her words cut deep. I had always known that Courtney resented me, but hearing her say it out loud felt like a punch to the gut. I had spent so many years working hard, doing everything I could to provide for Emma and build a future for us. And this was how my own sister saw me? I took a deep breath and reminded myself that I didn't need to explain myself to her. I didn't need to justify my worth to anyone anymore. But as I looked at Barbara and Courtney, I realized that I wasn't sure I could keep pretending that everything was fine. "Actually, I need to speak with you both about something," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "I received a call from Arlington Financial today. They said my job offer has been cancelled." Barbara's face paled, and I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes. "What? No, that can't be right," I said, my heart racing. "They said it was due to family circumstances, and that you recommended Courtney instead." For a moment, there was silence, and then Barbara simply said, "Well, I thought it would be better for Courtney. You've been busy with Emma, and this job is too demanding for you. I didn't want you to struggle." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't concern, it was control. It was her deciding that I wasn't capable of handling the life I had built for myself. that I wasn't worthy of the job I had fought so hard to secure. My chest tightened with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. Courtney smirked, and I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. It's for the best. Big sis, you've got your hands full with Emma. Let someone else handle the tough stuff. The hurt was too much. It was one thing to see their indifference. But this was betrayal. They didn't just want to control my life. They wanted to destroy it. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I don't know why you're doing this, but I'm not backing down. I'm going to get that job back. And I'll prove to you both that I can handle it. You won't stop me. But I knew, deep down, that this wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about finally taking control of my own life. Of not letting anyone, especially family, hold me back from what I deserved. As I drove home that night, Emma sat quietly in the backseat, sensing the change in me. Mom, are you okay? She asked softly. I turned to her, trying to hide the tears threatening to fall. I'm fine, sweetie, don't worry about me. But as I looked at her, I knew that I couldn't let this go on any longer. For her sake, and for my own, I had to fight back. And I would. The days after that painful confrontation with my family were filled with turmoil. I felt like I had been tossed between anger and heartbreak, unable to settle into either emotion for long. I couldn't stop replaying the conversation in my mind. Barbara's cold justification. Courtney's smugness. It felt like everything I had worked for had been taken from me in an instant. Not by my own failure, but by the very people who should have supported me. But I wasn't about to let them win. I wasn't about to let their hurtful actions define my future. The next morning, I woke up determined to find a solution. I knew I couldn't give up on my dreams. Not after everything I had sacrificed. Emma needed to see that I wouldn't back down. That I would keep fighting. No matter how hard it got. I tried to contact Arlington Financial's HR department. But when I finally reached the person in charge, they told me that the position had already been filled. It stung, but it didn't surprise me. I knew that once they received my mother's communication, it would be difficult to undo the damage. But I couldn't just sit back and accept it. I had worked too hard to let someone else take that away from me. With my resolve hardening, I turned to my friend Jessica. She had been my rock through all of this, offering me support and comfort when I needed it most. As I shared my frustration with her over coffee, Jessica listened intently, never judging, just offering a calm presence that I desperately needed. You need to calm down and think of a different strategy, she said gently, offering me a cup of coffee. You're a talented woman, Lena. With your qualifications, you'll find another opportunity soon. It's just a matter of timing. Her words were a balm to my wounded spirit. I realized she was right. I didn't need Arlington Financial to prove my worth. I had the skills, the determination, and the drive to make it anywhere. I wasn't going to let my mother and sister's cruelty derail my future. Over the next few days, I focused on updating my resume and sending out applications to other companies. While they might not have been as prestigious as Arlington, several other firms were looking for financial analysts. And I knew my qualifications would stand out. I couldn't afford to wallow in the injustice I had suffered. I had to move forward. For Emma and for myself. One evening, after another long day of searching and applying for jobs, I picked Emma up from school and drove us home. She was as bright and cheerful as always. But there was a softness in her eyes that told me she had noticed my sadness. She was perceptive. More so than I often gave her credit for. Mom, are you okay? She asked. Her voice laced with concern. I forced a smile. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired, that's all. But Emma wasn't convinced. Did Grandma and Aunt Courtney say something mean again? I blinked back tears, hating how perceptive she was. Sometimes, people don't understand each other. Emma, but that's okay. We have our own path to walk. You and I were going to be just fine. She hugged me tightly, and for a moment, I felt my resolve strengthening. For her sake, I had to move on from this. For her sake, I would rebuild. A week later, I received an unexpected call. The voice on the other end of the line was familiar, Robert Blackwell. the CEO of Arlington Financial. Lena, this is Robert Blackwell. I need to speak with you. It's about the situation with your job offer. Could you come in this afternoon? I froze, my heart racing. I hadn't expected this. What could he possibly want? My mind raced with 1,000 questions. But I knew one thing for sure. This was my chance to make things right. To get the truth out. I didn't waste any time. I called Jessica and asked her to pick up Emma from school. Then, I headed straight to my mother's house. This time, I wasn't going to let them dictate my life. I rang the doorbell with a sense of purpose, ready to face whatever came next. Barbara opened the door, her face drained of the usual arrogance I had come to expect. "Maggie," she said, her voice shaky, "what are you doing here?" "I need to speak with you and Courtney," I replied firmly. "There's a meeting at Arlington Financial. The CEO wants to talk to all of us." Barbara's face went pale at the mention of Robert Blackwell. And just as I had anticipated, Courtney appeared at the top of the stairs. Her own face ashen. Something was happening. I could feel the tension in the air. And for the first time, I realized that maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to reclaim my future. As I stepped into the conference room at Arlington Financial, my heart pounded in my chest. Sitting across from me were Robert Blackwell, the CEO, and several executives, all wearing stern expressions. My mother and sister sat beside me, their faces pale and apprehensive. It was as though we were about to face judgment, not just for the job, but for everything that had led to this moment. "Miss Carter," Robert began, his voice firm but not unkind. "We need to clear up some misunderstandings regarding your position." He turned to my mother. "Barbara, it appears you recommended your daughter, Courtney, for the position, using Lena's qualifications as your own. This is not just an issue of family loyalty, it's a serious matter of ethics." My mother's face went ashen, and her hands trembled as she clutched her purse. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand," she whispered. Courtney, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, her voice weak. I couldn't do the job. I failed this morning at the client meeting. I'm sorry." The room fell into a tense silence. I looked at them, at my mother, who had never truly supported me, and at my sister, who had taken everything from me. But I felt no anger now. Just a deep, overwhelming sense of relief. The truth had come out. Robert turned to me then. "Lena, you've shown us your worth. We're offering you the position once again. We know your abilities are genuine, and we would like to extend our original offer to you." Tears welled up in my eyes as I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. I had worked so hard. And finally, it was all being recognized. As I left the office that day, the weight I had carried for years seemed to lift from my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I had reclaimed my future. Not just for myself, but for Emma. And as the days passed, I realized that the true measure of family wasn't blood, it was respect, love, and the courage to stand up for what you believe in. Thank you for following my journey. Don't forget to subscribe for more life stories that inspire and empower.